When I came back from a 4-day hike in the Rockies, my key wouldn't turn. Not jammed, not rusty. It simply didn't belong there anymore. The house behind that door was worth $3 million. Paid off. Clear title. A place I built room by room after my wife passed in 2014. I stood there in dusty boots, still smelling pine and cold air, staring at a lock that looked newer than the paint around it. I called my son. "Damon, what's going on?" Silence first, then calm. Too calm. "Dad, the house is gone. It's for your own good. Gone." He said it like we were discussing an old sofa, not the property that secured a $1.2 million federal tax installment agreement I signed back in 2018. Not the only collateral the Internal Revenue Service had on file under my name. I didn't argue, didn't shout. I just hung up and watched the porch camera light blink red. Welcome to Final Act Revenge, ladies and gentlemen. Please note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes, and before we go any further, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Stay hydrated tonight. Get some rest when this is over. Because 3 days after that phone call, a certified federal envelope was delivered, not to me, but to my son. And that was when he realized what he had really changed. My name is Elliot Sunlight, 69 years old, retired commercial contractor. I spent 32 years building mid-rise office structures across Colorado and Wyoming. Steel frames, concrete decks, honest work. I never inherited money. I poured sidewalks at 19, framed houses in winter at 24. By the time I was 58, I owned Sunlight Structural, LLC, a modest firm, nothing glamorous, but respected. My wife, Teresa, used to say, "You don't build buildings, you build stability." She passed in 2014. Ovarian cancer. 9 months from diagnosis to hospice. The mansion everyone talks about. It wasn't a trophy. It was the one place she picked herself. A cedar-lined balcony facing west. She liked sunsets. Damon was 32 when she died. Restless, ambitious, sharp mind, quick temper. He never wanted to pour concrete. He wanted startups. Venture capital. Words like scale and exit. I didn't discourage him. I funded his first logistics app in 2016. $200,000. It failed in 18 months. I told him, failure isn't fatal. Debt is. He didn't like that. In 2018, after a brutal IRS audit on my company's deferred payroll taxes from the recession years, I negotiated an installment agreement, $1.2 million, paid monthly, clean record, no shortcuts. The house became collateral. That was the condition. Damon knew that. At least, I believed he did. After Teresa's funeral, he began talking differently, about efficiency, about consolidating assets. He once stood in the kitchen and said, "Dad, this place is dead equity." Dead equity. I remember the way he said it, like numbers were cleaner than memories. I wasn't a perfect father. I worked long hours, missed birthdays, but I never missed a payment, not on taxes, not on that house, not on his tuition at CU Boulder. When I came back from that hike and the lock had changed, I kept replaying one thing in my head. Damon had asked, 2 months earlier, for a copy of my financial binder. "I just want to understand your structure," he said. "For planning." Planning what? 3 days after he told me the house was gone, my CPA, Samuel Pierce, called at 7:12 a.m. "Elliot," he said slowly, "did you authorize a title transfer?" And that was the first moment I realized this wasn't just about a lock. Samuel did not repeat the question. He did not have to. "Did you authorize a title transfer?" That sentence sat between us like a cold pane of glass. "No," I said. My voice was steady, almost detached. I was hiking. He exhaled slowly. There is a recorded warranty deed filed yesterday morning, Jefferson County. The grantee is Damon Sunlight. For a moment, I said nothing, not because I was shocked, but because I was calculating. A deed requires a signature, a notary, identification, dates, documentation. This wasn't something done in the dark with a screwdriver. When was it notarized? I asked. 3 days ago. 3 days ago, I was standing at 11,000 feet watching the sunrise hit granite. No cell service, no witnesses, no way to confirm where I was. Samuel continued, "There is a power of attorney attached, durable, signed last winter." That made my jaw tighten. My jaw. Last winter, Damon had insisted on helping me organize paperwork. He brought coffee, brought tabs, brought highlighters. He said, "Dad, we should simplify things in case something happens." Something. I remembered signing limited authority for medical coordination, not property transfer, not asset liquidation. "Send me a copy," I said. 5 minutes later, the PDF arrived. The signature looked like mine. The slope, the heavy pressure on the S in sunlight. But the middle initial was wrong. I never sign with my middle initial. Small mistake, big consequence. Samuel lowered his voice. "Elliot, your installment agreement with the IRS requires notification of ownership change within 30 days. If this transfer wasn't disclosed, it may trigger acceleration." Acceleration. That word is clinical, polite. It means the full balance becomes immediately due. $1.2 million, plus interest. And the house was the collateral. I closed my eyes for a second. Not in despair, in clarity. "Has Damon contacted you?" I asked. "No, but his bank has. They're requesting payoff statements for refinancing." Refinancing. So that was the plan. Transfer the title, remove the collateral, refinance under his name, extract equity, leave the federal obligation attached to a house no longer legally mine. It was clever, cold, but clever. I drove past the mansion that afternoon, didn't get out, just watched from across the street. New locks, new security decal, my cedar balcony still facing west. Through the window, I saw Damon pacing, phone to ear, smile tight. He thought this was consolidation. He thought this was modernization. He didn't understand federal paperwork does not disappear when you move a name on a deed. That evening, another call came in, not from Samuel. From a number I recognized only because I had seen it before, in 2018. Internal Revenue Service, Denver Field Office. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Mr. Sunlight," the voice said calmly, "this is Revenue Officer Kevin Morales. We need to discuss a change in your secured asset status." And that was the moment I knew. The lock on my door was not the real problem. Revenue Officer Kevin Morales did not sound angry. That was the unsettling part. "Mr. Sunlight," he said evenly, "our records show a secured asset transfer tied to your 2018 installment agreement. We were not notified." "I didn't authorize it," I replied. A pause, paper shuffling on his end. "Intent isn't the issue, sir. The collateral has changed hands." Collateral. That word again. Clean, neutral, as if we were discussing lumber inventory instead of the only home Teresa ever chose. Kevin continued, "The agreement you signed contains a clause. If the secured property is transferred without prior approval, the remaining balance may become immediately due." May. He said it softly, but we both knew what that meant. "When does may become will?" I asked. "If refinancing activity is detected or equity extraction is attempted." There it was, refinancing. So Damon wasn't just moving paper, he was moving money. I thanked Kevin and hung up. Then I called Damon. He answered on the second ring. Dad, his tone carried impatience, not guilt. Did you try to refinance the house? I asked. A breath, slight shift in his voice. I'm restructuring assets. That place is inefficient capital. You pledged it to secure my federal agreement, I said. You're retired. It's dead weight. I'm improving it. Improving it? As if the government would applaud his initiative. Did you inform the IRS? I asked quietly. That's your old problem, he said. The title's clean now. Clean. I almost admired the confidence. After we hung up, Samuel Pierce called again. Elliot, Damon's lender requested payoff documentation for the property tax lien history. And once a federally secured property enters underwriting review, automated reporting flags the IRS system. He let that settle. Meaning the refinance attempt may have already triggered examination. I drove to a small cafe near downtown Denver and sat with a legal pad. I wrote down dates, amounts, terms. I wrote down one number in the center of the page, $1,204,382.17. That was the remaining balance, including accrued interest. Damon did not know that number. He believed the house was simply equity. $3 million in granite and cedar. He didn't understand it was also a promise, documented in federal transcripts. 2 days later, Samuel forwarded me a copy of a lender inquiry report. Underwriting notes. One line stood out. Existing federal installment agreement secured by subject property. Confirmation requested. That confirmation would not be casual. That confirmation would not be slow. That evening, Kevin Morales left a voicemail. Mr. Sunlight, we need to meet regarding potential acceleration review. Acceleration review. Not a threat, a process. And processes, in my experience, move forward, whether you panic or not. I looked at the old key still sitting on my kitchen counter at the hotel. Metal. Heavy. Useless. 3 days later, a certified envelope was scanned into Damon's mailbox by the courier service he used for his startup shipments. He texted me at 9:47 p.m. Why is the IRS sending me something? That was the first crack in his voice. And it was only the beginning. The envelope was certified. Green slip. Treasury seal. Damon sent me a photo of it before opening it. What is this? He texted. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Dad, he said, voice tight now. Why does this say Notice of Default Review? Because you moved collateral attached to federal debt without authorization. But I didn't say that. What does the letter say? I asked instead. Paper rustled on his end. It says the installment agreement dated May 2018 is under examination due to material change in secured asset status. It lists the remaining balance. Why is that number so high? He read it out loud. $1,214,608.42. He stopped breathing for a moment. That can't be right. Interest accrues daily. Agreements don't sleep. Did you refinance? I asked quietly. I started the process, he admitted. It's just leverage, Dad. That house was underutilized. Underutilized. There it was again, the language of optimization. Did your lender ask about federal liens? I continued. Yes, but I told them it was your issue. The title's in my name now. I let that settle. Damon, I said slowly, when you assume a secured property, you assume what secures it. Silence. He didn't like silence. It forced him to think. Later that afternoon, Samuel Pierce called me. The IRS system logged a code 971 yesterday. What does that mean? Automated review triggered. They're examining compliance. And if they determine non-compliance? They can issue Letter 1058, Final Notice of Intent to Levy. That phrase carries weight. It is not theatrical. It is procedural. 2 days later, Damon called again. This time, he didn't try to sound composed. "There's another letter. What does it say?" "It says failure to cure may result in acceleration of full balance and levy action." "Dad, what does acceleration mean?" He knew. He just needed to hear it. "It means the full amount becomes immediately due." "That's insane," he snapped. "I didn't borrow that money." "No," I replied, "but you moved the house that secured it." Breathing on the other end, uneven. "I can just reverse the deed," he said quickly. "I'll transfer it back." "It's already under federal review," I said. "Transfers during examination can be treated as evasive." Another silence. Longer this time. That evening, Kevin Morales called me directly. "Mr. Sunlight, we have confirmed refinancing inquiry activity on the secured property." "I did not authorize the transfer," I repeated. "I understand," he said. "However, ownership has changed. We will be issuing a formal determination within 10 business days." 10 days. In business language, that is brief. In family language, that is eternity. Damon showed up at the hotel that night. No appointment, no warning. He stood in the lobby, jaw set, holding a folder. "Why didn't you tell me it was this serious?" "I did," I said calmly. "In 2018. You never explained it like this. You never asked." He dropped the folder onto the table between us. Lender documents. Appraisal at $3.05 million. Projected cash-out equity of $1.1 million. He had already planned how to spend it. "I was going to reinvest," he insisted. "Scale my company. This was smart." "Smart for who?" I asked. "For us," he shot back. "Us." The word sounded hollow. "I carried that agreement for 5 years," I said quietly. "Never missed a payment. You thought paperwork vanished when you changed a lock." He ran a hand through his hair. For the first time, I saw something that looked less like arrogance and more like fear. "If they accelerate," he whispered, "I can't cover it." That was the first honest sentence he had spoken. The next morning, a new notification appeared in the IRS online transcript. Status: installment agreement, pending termination review. And 3 days later, Samuel called with a tone I hadn't heard from him in years. "Elliot," he said, "they've scheduled a field officer visit." To the house. The field visit was scheduled for Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Not dramatic, not urgent sounding. Just precise. Kevin Morales did not arrive with sirens. He drove a plain gray sedan and carried a slim leather portfolio. Neighbors would have thought he was an insurance adjuster or a real estate assessor. Damon called me 20 minutes before the appointment. "He's here," he said. "What do I tell him?" "Tell him the truth," I replied. "That you didn't authorize it? That you transferred secured collateral without federal approval." Silence. "You're enjoying this," Damon muttered. "No, I wasn't. I was watching gravity do what gravity does." Later that afternoon, Samuel forwarded me a brief memo from Kevin Morales. Site visit completed. Ownership confirmed. Refinance inquiry documented. Acceleration review recommended. Recommended. That word matters. Acceleration is not automatic. It is evaluated, reviewed, signed off. Damon came by again that evening, this time without swagger. His shoulders seemed smaller somehow. "They're asking for financial disclosure," he said. "Personal, corporate, everything." "That's standard," I answered. "For criminals," he snapped. "For debtors," I corrected. He began pacing the hotel room. "I can get bridge financing," he said quickly. "I have investors. If I raise 200 grand fast, they won't accelerate." "Acceleration doesn't work like that," I said. "It's not a negotiation once compliance is broken." He stopped walking. "What if I claim you lacked capacity, that the original agreement was flawed?" He said it casually, as if suggesting a marketing pivot. I looked at him carefully. Be very careful, I said. You would need to prove that in court. He held my gaze for a few seconds, then looked away. That was the first time I saw the fracture. The next morning, Samuel called again. They've issued letter 2975, he said quietly. I knew that code. Preliminary termination notice. Timeline? I asked. 30 days unless reversed. But Elliot, because the secured property changed hands during refinancing review, they may accelerate sooner. How much sooner? He hesitated. I would expect determination within 10 business days. 10 days. Damon thought he had months. He did not understand federal calendars do not run on optimism. 2 days later, he texted me screenshots from his banking app, accounts showing projected freeze warnings. What does levy mean? He asked. It means they collect, I answered. He called immediately. They can't just take money, he said. They can, I replied, if due process is completed. You're just going to let this happen? That question hung in the air. Let, as if I controlled the Internal Revenue Service. I signed that agreement, I said, so I honored it for 5 years. You disrupted it. He lowered his voice. If they accelerate, they're going to come after me. Yes. Another silence. Then something shifted. Dad, what if I transfer the house back right now? You already tried refinancing. That activity is logged. Reversals during review can be treated as fraudulent conveyance. He swallowed. I didn't know. That was true, but ignorance does not cancel paperwork. That evening, Kevin Morales left another voicemail. Mr. Sunlight, formal determination has been approved. The installment agreement is terminated effective immediately. Terminated. One word. Clean. Absolute. Balance. Due in full. Damon showed up outside the mansion after sunset and called me from the driveway. They're saying the entire amount is due now, he said, voice thin. 1.2 million plus accrued interest. Correct, I replied. They can't expect me to pay that. They can expect whoever owns the secured asset to satisfy the balance. He didn't respond. Wind moved through the trees behind him. I could hear it through the phone. Then he said something I had not expected. I thought you were the liability. And that was when the certified envelope marked Final Notice of Intent to Levy was scanned into his mailbox at 6:42 a.m. the next morning. The envelope was thicker this time. Final Notice of Intent to Levy. Damon read it out loud to me over the phone, his voice cracking between legal phrases. It says I have 30 days to request a collection due process hearing. Otherwise, they can levy bank accounts, garnish receivables, and seize property. Property. He was standing in that property when he said it. Dad, he whispered, what do I do? That question used to come when he was 8 and broke a window with a baseball. Now it came wrapped in federal statute. Call an attorney, I said. I already did. And? They said because the secured asset transfer happened during refinance underwriting, it looks like bad faith. Bad faith. That phrase carries weight in federal circles. It opens doors you don't want opened. Later that afternoon, Kevin Morales visited the house again. This time Damon didn't meet him at the door. He met him in the driveway. Kevin remained calm, clipboard in hand, treasury badge clipped inside his jacket. I'm here to confirm receipt of letter 1058, Kevin said. Damon nodded. I'm requesting a hearing, he replied. You may, Kevin said, but levy preparation will continue pending determination. Pending. The machine does not pause because you are hopeful. That evening, Samuel Pierce called me with a quiet urgency. They've flagged something additional, he said. What now? When the deed transferred, the federal tax lien attached automatically to the new owner's interest. Yes, but because refinancing documents were initiated before IRS approval, the case has been referred for civil fraud penalty review. Civil fraud. 75% of the underpayment could be added as a penalty. That would push exposure beyond $2 million. I closed my eyes for a moment, not in satisfaction, in recognition. Damon called 30 minutes later. "They're talking about fraud," he said, voice trembling. "Fraud. Did you disclose the installment agreement to your lender?" I asked. He hesitated. "I told them it was inactive." Inactive. A small word. A costly one. "That statement is now documented," I said. He exhaled sharply. "I was trying to protect my valuation." "You were protecting an illusion," I answered. Silence followed. Heavy. Honest. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A white SUV pulled into the driveway, not IRS, not Treasury. It was a courier delivering a notice from Damon's primary bank. Account review initiated due to federal lien status change. They weren't freezing funds yet, but they were watching. His startup depended on rolling cash flow, vendor payments, payroll drafts, subscription renewals. Watching was enough. That afternoon, Damon came to see me in person. He didn't sit. He stood near the window. "I can fix this," he said quietly. "If you co-sign a reinstatement request, they might reconsider." "I did not violate the agreement," I said. "But you're the original debtor, and you are the current owner." His jaw tightened. "You could help me." "I helped you in 2016, I replied. $200,000. He flinched. "This is different." "Yes," I said. "It is." For the first time, he didn't argue. He looked tired, older than his years. "I didn't think paperwork could do this," he murmured. Paperwork built the country he lives in. 2 days later, Samuel called again. "The civil fraud penalty review has been approved for consideration," he said. "For consideration," I repeated. "That means if sustained, liability increases substantially. And Elliott, because Damon signed refinance disclosures, personal liability exposure expands." Expands, meaning not just the house, not just the startup, potentially personal accounts. That evening, Damon called me from inside the mansion. "I can't sleep here anymore," he said softly. "It feels like it's not mine." It never was. At 8:03 a.m. the following Monday, Kevin Morales filed an official notice of federal tax lien update with Jefferson County Records, public, searchable, permanent. And at 8:47 a.m., Damon texted me a screenshot from his banking app. Account status, restricted pending levy review. That was the moment the fear became real. The bank freeze did not happen all at once. It started quietly. A vendor payment failed, then payroll draft flagged. Then subscription auto-renewals paused. Damon called me at 6:14 a.m. "They restricted operating transfers," he said. "They're saying compliance review." Compliance review. That is how systems begin to close in. "Have they levied yet?" I asked. "Not officially, but they're preparing." He sounded tired. No arrogance left, just calculation racing against fear. That afternoon, Samuel Pierce sent over the transcript update. Status: installment agreement. Terminated. Balance due immediately. Civil fraud penalty under consideration. Under consideration. That phrase is colder than an accusation. It means they are measuring the damage. Damon drove to my hotel without calling first. He didn't stand this time. He sat. "L," he said quietly. He hadn't called me that since he was in high school. "They're saying if the penalty is sustained, I'm personally liable for 75% additional assessment." "Yes," I replied. "That pushes exposure past 2 million. "Yes." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I can't carry that." The truth finally arrived without decoration. I studied him for a long moment. He looked like a man who had built something on borrowed certainty. "I survived an IRS audit in 2011, I said softly. "It nearly ended my company." "You never told me that." You weren't listening. He swallowed. I thought you were outdated, he admitted. Too cautious, too slow. Caution built that house, I said. He nodded faintly. That night, something shifted further. A notice of levy preparation was issued to Damon's primary bank under Code 668-A. Not a seizure yet, but an instruction. The next morning, he texted me a screenshot. Available balance, $0 funds, held $112,430.17. They had frozen operating cash. His startup depended on liquidity. Without it, vendor confidence evaporated fast. By afternoon, one of his investors emailed him withdrawing support, pending resolution of federal encumbrance concerns. Encumbrance. That word travels quickly in entrepreneurial circles. Damon called again near sunset. They're treating me like a criminal. They're treating you like a debtor under review, I said. He was quiet for several seconds. Then he said something that caught me off guard. I didn't mean to hurt you. There it was. Not regret for the money, not regret for the risk, regret for the fracture. You replaced the locks, I replied calmly. I thought you'd resist selling. I thought you'd block progress. Progress? I walked to the window and looked at the skyline. You confuse speed with progress, I said. He didn't argue. Later that evening, Kevin Morales left another message. Mr. Sunlight, levy execution scheduling has been initiated pending hearing outcome. Execution scheduling. Clinical language. Precise timing. The following day, Damon drove back to the mansion and sat on the front steps. Not inside, outside. Neighbors passed, some slowed. Federal lien records are public. Word spreads faster than apology. He called me from those steps. I don't feel like this house belongs to me anymore, he said quietly. It never did, I answered. He exhaled slowly. Can you help me? There it was again. Help. I didn't respond immediately, because for the first time, I could see the edge he was standing on. And 10 minutes later, Samuel Pierce called with an update that changed the temperature entirely. The civil fraud penalty review has been approved for formal assessment. Approved, which meant the number was about to grow. When Samuel said the penalty review had been approved, the room felt smaller. Formal assessment will follow, he explained. Once assessed, it becomes enforceable like the original tax. How long? I asked. Possibly within days. Days, not months, not appeals stretching into seasons. Damon came to see me that night without anger, without strategy, just exhaustion. They're adding 75%, he said, on top of everything. Yes. That's over 900,000 more. Yes. He laughed once, a short, empty sound. I thought the risk was leverage. I thought worst case we'd negotiate. You negotiated with a lock, I said quietly. They negotiate with statute. He sat across from me and rubbed his eyes. I can reverse the deed, he said again. Put it back in your name. We can argue clerical error. It won't erase the refinance disclosures, I replied. And it won't erase the lien update. He nodded faintly. He knew that now. The next morning, the assessment posted to the transcript. Civil fraud penalty, $903,456.11. Total balance due exceeded $2 million. $2 million. That number changes posture. Damon called me from the bank parking lot. They won't release funds, he said, even for payroll. Levy preparation is active, I answered. They're treating it like I tried to cheat them. You signed lender disclosures stating the federal encumbrance was inactive. Silence. Then softer. I was embarrassed. Embarrassed. It wasn't greed alone. It was image. The following afternoon, something new appeared. A public record notice filed online. Federal tax lien, updated responsible party Damon Sunlight. Searchable, indexed, permanent. Within hours, one of his vendors terminated a contract citing federal risk exposure. That was the first external collapse. That evening, he drove to the mountains where I used to hike. He called from a turnout overlooking the valley. "I thought I was smarter than you," he said. "You are smarter in some ways," I replied. "But not wiser," he finished quietly. No accusation, just recognition. The next day, Kevin Morales called me directly. "Mr. Sunlight, Levy execution is scheduled pending hearing waiver." "Hearing waiver?" I asked. "Mr. Damon Sunlight has not formally requested a collection due process hearing within the initial response window." I closed my eyes. He had been paralyzed by strategy and missed the clock. "What happens now?" I asked. "Bank levy finalization. Potential seizure procedures if balance remains unresolved." Procedures. Always procedures. Damon called 30 minutes later. "I thought my attorney filed the hearing request," he said. "They didn't?" I asked. "They advised settlement first." Settlement without a hearing. The window had narrowed. "I can't cover this," he whispered, "even if I liquidate everything." "That is likely true," I said. He didn't argue. For the first time since this began, there was no defense in his voice. Just fear. That evening, Samuel forwarded one more update. Levy Code 668-A executed. Funds seized. $112,430.17. Remaining balance adjusted accordingly. It was small compared to $2 million. But it was real. The machine had moved. And at 8 a.m. the following Monday, Kevin Morales scheduled a final property valuation review tied to potential seizure proceedings, which meant the mansion was no longer just collateral. It was becoming inventory. The valuation visit was not dramatic. No flashing lights, no shouting, just a clipboard, a camera, and a man measuring square footage. Kevin Morales arrived at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Damon opened the door this time. No confidence, no performance. "Morning," Kevin said politely. "Morning," Damon replied. They walked room by room, kitchen, office, balcony. Teresa once chose. The cedar panels still smelled faintly of sun-warmed resin. I did not go inside. I stood across the street and watched from the sidewalk, not hiding, just observing. The law does not need spectacle. It needs documentation. By noon, the preliminary seizure report had been filed. Estimated fair market value, $3,080,000. Encumbrances, federal tax lien, priority. Disposition, eligible for judicial sale if balance unpaid. Eligible. That word moves quietly, but permanently. Damon called me from the driveway after Kevin left. "They're valuing it for sale," he said. "Yes, they can't just take it. They can petition for judicial approval. And then they auction." Silence. Wind moved through the trees again. "I thought you would stop this," he said finally. "Why?" I asked. "Because I'm your son." I let that breathe. "You changed the locks," I replied calmly. He didn't argue. Later that afternoon, Samuel Pierce called with confirmation. "The levy has been executed on all known liquid accounts," he said. "Next phase is seizure consideration." "How long?" I asked. "Typically weeks, but the assessment size accelerates priority." Priority. That word carries weight in government systems. By evening, Damon's startup website displayed a maintenance notice. Investors had frozen support. Vendors demanded prepaid terms. Credit lines were suspended pending federal resolution. He came to see me that night, not to negotiate, to sit. We didn't speak for a while. Finally, he said, "I thought speed would win." "Speed wins races," I answered. "It doesn't win audits." A faint, broken smile crossed his face. For the first time since this began, He looked less like a challenger and more like a son who had misjudged distance. The next morning, the official notice of seizure intent was recorded in county filings, public, searchable, permanent. Within hours, two neighbors texted Damon asking if he was selling. Humiliation rarely needs volume. By afternoon, Kevin Morales called me directly. "Mr. Sunlight, unless full payment is arranged within the next 14 days, judicial sale proceedings will begin." 14 days, 2 weeks to resolve $2 million. Damon called me immediately after. "They're giving me a deadline," he said. 14 days. Yes. If I liquidate everything, if I declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy does not discharge civil fraud penalties easily, I said quietly. He knew that now. He exhaled slowly. "I thought I was protecting the future." "You were protecting control," I replied. Another silence, then something different. "Dad, if they take it, will you come back inside once?" Inside, as if permission still mattered. I didn't answer immediately, because the house was no longer a house. It was a file number. And that evening, the official petition for judicial sale was prepared for submission to federal court. The petition moved quietly through the court system. No spectacle, no dramatic hearing, just paperwork, signatures, stamps. Within weeks, the mansion was scheduled for judicial sale. Damon moved out before the notice was posted on the front gate. He did not wait for deputies. He did not wait for cameras. He packed his belongings into a rented truck and left at dawn. The cedar balcony faced west one last time without him. The sale did not fully satisfy the balance. Civil fraud penalties do not vanish easily. He entered a structured repayment plan that will follow him for years. Credit fractured, startup dissolved, reputation altered. The system does not shout when it corrects you. It documents you. I did not reclaim the house. That surprises people when they hear this story. I chose not to. Once something becomes inventory, it loses its warmth. Instead, I rented a modest condo overlooking the same mountains I hiked when this began. And a year later, something happened I did not expect. I was finishing a morning walk when I saw him at the trailhead. Damon. No suit, no phone pressed to his ear, just a thermos in his hand. He walked toward me slowly. "I should have listened," he said. "No excuses, no blame. Just that." We stood there for a moment, wind moving through pine. Same air I breathed the day my key stopped fitting. "I thought strength meant control," he continued quietly. "I didn't understand responsibility." Responsibility. That word takes longer to learn than leverage. I nodded. We did not hug. We did not repair everything in one sentence. But his eyes were different. Less sharp, more aware. Justice does not always mean destruction. Sometimes it means consequence and clarity. If there is one thing I learned, it is this. Paperwork is not the enemy. Silence is not weakness. And control without accountability is fragile. To those of you listening tonight, thank you for staying with me. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always find it grounding to see how far these stories travel. And if you made it to the end, rate this story from 1 to 10. Your feedback helps shape the next one. Please note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for entertainment, education, and reflection. If it moved you even slightly, consider subscribing to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting on your screen right now. YouTube thinks you'll enjoy it, and I hope you do.